Parts of the north of England, Scotland and areas of Northern Ireland were deluged by devastating floods. Homes were destroyed and livelihoods were lost. In response, the government promised £2.3 billion to help strengthen existing flood defences and start the building of new ones. But 6 months on, how are communities recovering, and are people's homes and businesses any closer to being repaired? A new report by members of Parliament on the Environment Audit Committee claims the government has failed in helping the people who need the most, and that the cash promised is not being spent the way it should be. Well, let's take a look back at some of the destruction the storms caused across the UK. Well, that's the impact of some of the flooding. In the studio with me, Mary Cray, MP, who is the chair of the Environment Audit Committee from Carlisle. We're joined by homeowner Tom Armstrong, whose home was badly damaged by floodwaters and still hasn't been repaired, and Phil King from Carlisle Football Club. Their ground was also hit, but is in the process of being repaired. Thank you all for joining us. Mary Cray, have people been let down?
We think so. The government has a tendency to cut flood defence spending at the start of the Parliament and then only put it back in when a devastating flood occurs, such as happened in 2013-14, or this year where they put an extra 700 million into the budget after the winter floods. That has two consequences. First of all, we don't build the flood defences that we need. We don't get best value for taxpayers' money, but we also don't look after the flood defences that we have. And what that means is that communities in areas think, oh, well, we've got these flood defences, will be okay, and those flood defences then fail when there is a flood, as we saw with the Foss Barrier in York, and that is a completely unacceptable risk.
So your committee thinks the government's playing politics with funding for flood defences?
The Minister said the extra money was put in as a political calculation and it wouldn't be spent according to the normal cost-benefit analysis. We think that that runs the risk of taxpayers' money not being spent well. It could lead to poor decision-making and it could lead to geographical unfairness as the areas that shout the loudest do the best out of the flood programme.
All budgets, barring obviously a couple that have been ring-fenced, have been cut. This budget obviously is no different from those, but money has been found when required. Are you saying that the money for flooding should be completely ring-fenced and protected as some other departments have been?
The reviews that we had after the devastating floods of 2007 said the funding needs to go up by more than inflation year on year, and this government in 2010 cut the flood defence budget by 30%. That meant that some of our critical flood assets were not maintained to the correct standard, and we think that that is completely wrong. But there are other areas, the area of local authorities not planning for flood risk. So we found that a third of local authorities did not have a flood plan that they could present to the government to say, this is what we're going to do in the event of a flood hitting our town or our area. And the final thing is critical infrastructure. We see roads washed away, bridges washed away, devastation on the transport network, the substations going down. So we want the government to give the energy, transport and telephone companies a responsibility to protect those assets from flooding so that when we have a flood, we don't have radio silence and the police, firefighters and ambulance can't respond.
OK, well, let's bring in two people who have been badly affected by the floods. Tom Armstrong, your house in Carlisle was badly damaged by the floods. Tell us what the extent of the damage has been.
There is a roundabout chest deep in my house. So we're at the point now where the house has been stripped out and dried. But because of my loss adjusters, Bill Keith of Crawford's, there's been no decision yet as to a figure for reinstating. So I'm still in a rental property with no further on than when I was 4 months ago.
Were there issues prior to the flooding where you live on flood defences? Do you think anything would have made a difference?
No, in Carlisle they spent around 30 million on flood defences, and after they were finished, we were considered a low-risk area. So no, prior to this, we didn't believe there were problems.
So do you think that anything could have been done differently, or is this effectively just a force of nature?
I think the flood defences could have been better. From what we were told, the EA raised flood defences to the height of the water of the last floods. So this time the flooding was worse, and therefore it breached the barriers. So yeah, I think the EA could have done more.
Okay, we're actually, Tom, while we hear from you, we're seeing pictures of your home.
Yes.
I mean, obviously it looks completely devastating. What's it been like living through that?
It's not been fantastic. The insurance company, AXA, are making it incredibly difficult. I'm self-employed, and I'm being forced for a fourth time to substantiate my contents list yet again. So first time, I understand I have to do that. A second time, fair enough, I'm not happy, but I've done it. I then have to substantiate a third time, and now a fourth, which I think is wholly unacceptable. It's really affecting my business. I'm having to take time out to try and find ways of substantiating it again and again and again.
Mary, you're nodding. You said yes when you heard about what might be going on with insurance companies.
Absolutely. This is my constituency, Wakefield, was flooded in 2007, and some insurance companies are great, others put a series of roadblocks in the way of the householder. And the other thing that they tend to do is then increase the flooding premium and to make the excess much higher. So for communities that do have to claim on flood insurance, they may find their insurance premiums going up, or their excess is rising to 5,000 or 10,000. We heard from one business in the Calder Valley whose excess on the flood premium had gone up from £1,000 to £250,000, and they were told if they install.
Can you blame the insurance companies, though? They face a massive hit, don't they, when something like this happens?
Well, the question is, somebody has to pay for this, and is cure better than prevention? So insurance plays a very important part in this. The government has put in place a new scheme for homeowners to be able to get affordable insurance, because many people who've been flooded once or twice find that they can no longer afford the insurance premiums, but that doesn't cover businesses. And for people
let's
like
bring
Tom,
in Phil, actually, because Phil is at Carlisle United Football Club. Tell us how the business there has been affected.
Yeah, it's had a massive impact on our operations. We were able to move quite quickly in the early phase in terms of getting football back down here at Brunton Park. We were forced to play 3 games, which should have been home games, away at other clubs. We were keen to get back in at Brunton Park pretty quickly, which we did for the 23rd of January. So that process moved quite quickly, and we were able to make decisions on a day-to-day basis. But kind of what's followed since has been quite a long, drawn-out process, which we're still going through now and will be for the next 2 or 3 months, in terms of reinstating areas like offices and revisiting some of those public areas, the changing rooms, redoing the pitch as well. So there's still a lot of work to do now, 6 months on, and it will be for the next couple of months.
So Phil, you've got a chance to speak directly to Mary Cray MP about what potentially could be done in future to make the lives of people where you are easier.
I think I agree with what Tom said. I think there was the floods 9 or 10 years ago in this area were pretty devastating, and since the flood defences were put in there, people thought we were quite comfortable and quite safe, and I think we were in that position as well. The flood defences actually run out the back of Brunton Park, and I know they have stopped water coming through on a number of times across the last 9 or 10 years. But it was a massive deluge of water. So I think from our point of view, we're in a position where we're, like a homeowner, we're based here at Brunton Park. It's a big facility, it's a big operation, and it was a massive disruption on our season. So I think we're in a position where we're waiting to say, well, will this happen again? And I think the likelihood is, well, perhaps it could now after it's happened 6 months ago.
Thank you all very much. Thank you. Let us know your thoughts on that. Lots of you getting in touch about the Conservative MP Sarah Willis